Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
I'd like to introduce today two gentlemen from Lingotek. Lingotek is a small company in Utah that is doing some interesting work on what they call language search engine, which is a tool for translators to use in doing translations. And I've got, speaking to us today will be Tim Hunt, who's the CEO of the company, and Aaron Davis, who's the CTO of the company. They'll be sharing the time today and be doing a demo and have an opportunity for some questions. They come quite experienced. Tim has had many, many years in the localization industry and had an opportunity to get acquainted with him in the last year or so. But at this point, who am I turning the time over to first? Aaron. Aaron will be speaking first, and again, Aaron Davis, and then Tim Hunt from Lingotek. Thank you.
So, like Steve said, I'm the CTO. I'm in charge of the engineering group we have there. We are 6 people strong, I think. Big engineering group. That makes up the majority of the whole company, which is about 12, right? Is that right? We just had a couple of changes, so we're numbers fluctuating a little bit. But I've been with Tim with Lingotek for almost 2 years now, and we started our whole development cycle right about, 2006, about January 2006, just a little bit before that. So we recruited the team, and I was the first one there. So I'm going to start out our presentation today just kind of giving you an introduction to the problems that we're trying to solve, the things that we're trying to do. And you probably know some of these problems already and maybe have come up with some good solutions. And so please interrupt me if you feel like you have a great solution and we should just make a note of it as we're going along. I don't have any problem with that. One of the things that we're very interested is understanding the human cycles and capturing the human cycles of translation that's going on. There are, if you're familiar with TM tools, which I'll talk about in a minute, some tools that are already out there that are capturing this idea of aligned corpora and making sure that what you've done in the past as a translator can be quickly searched and returned back to you as you go along. We feel like there's a couple of problems with that, which I'll talk about some more, and that's why we proposed this language search engine. Those other two are just a little bit about the language search engine. We're going to give you a demo, which Tim will do, and I'll probably interrupt a little bit there as well. And like I said, feel free to direct some technical questions my way if you'd like. I won't get real detailed in the technical part right now, but maybe when we go and do the demo, I'll talk about it some more. So when I talk about human cycles, like I said, this is mostly the repetition. That's probably the big one. There are lots of repetitive phrases and maybe whole sentences, maybe paragraphs, etc. Especially in technical documentation, there can be large chunks, maybe up to 90% or so of a manual that's exactly the same. And so the TM tools they've come out and they've addressed that. Some of the other problems that we've also seen, the translator is typically not the author of the text. I guess that can happen from time to time, but typically is not. And so even within a document, as you're moving through the document, there may be a lack of consistency. The translator may not be as familiar with some certain phrases within a domain, and they may say, well, I don't, translate it one way at one time, and then they come 800 pages later to that same phrase, and they translate it a different way the next time because it doesn't mean the same to them as the author, who's very concerned with using the same vocabulary. Other problems, translators tend to be very disparate. They tend to be across the world. This can be tricky in terms of getting them the source documentation that they're trying to translate. And then, of course, there's this text formatting issue that we're also kind of addressing, which is, I send you a document of a certain type, and now you have to not only translate it, but somehow try and fit the text into the right space and do those kinds of things. So that's something else that we've addressed. Like I said, there's TM tools. Just for my sake, how many people are familiar with TM tools or have already used some? Okay, that gives me a good idea. Basically, like I said, that it's the storage of aligned corpora, and then searching that to try and find previous translations that have been done. There are reviews by domain experts. This is kind of a way to solve that problem I was talking about earlier, where if you're not, if you're not the domain expert and the translator in a particular area, a lot of times what will happen. I know we've done some medical translations, for example, and medical, terminology tends to be very specific, and you need to have some domain expertise in that area to be able to translate it. What we will do is have a reviewer come in and review what an earlier translator has done to see if the terminology is correct for that particular field. The disparate locations I was talking about, the solution today tends to be email, and there's even a fair amount of mailing just a CD around, getting it out to the right people. There's a lack of appropriate software. That's kind of tied to that disparate location problem that I talked about before as well. I mean, if you're in Argentina and you can't, readily get whatever, maybe it's Adobe FrameMaker or something like that, and you get an Adobe FrameMaker file, well then, you might be stuck and not able to do anything. So that tends to be a problem. And then a solution with the text formatting that's come up is people are just charging extra for this. They're just tacking on a service fee to say, well, we'll go ahead and translate it into some text file or some very simple file, and then if you'd like it also DTP desktop published, marked up and fitted to the appropriate area, then we'll do that as well for an extra fee. Those solutions that we've seen out in the translation localization world have led to a few extra problems. So these are the problems that maybe come from that. There are some very expensive tools. There are a few free TM tools, but kind of the mainstream tools that you're probably familiar with can be very expensive especially for, say, a third world country or some other less developed country. The searching tends to be segregated. So you usually pull in your TM from some kind of domain-specific area. So you may take in your medical TM in the example I gave before, and it will search your medical TM, but it doesn't search anything else that you have. And there are occasions when you want it to go and look in other domains as well, and maybe rank those things differently. Again, like I said, there's a lack of appropriate software. And sorry, the last part right there. The collaboration. There tends to be this email thing going on that I was describing before, where a project manager will email someone in say Russia, and maybe they're sitting in California, and the time difference and everything, it could be 2 days before they get something back, or they need to stay up all night and wait for it, or maybe they need to talk to the reviewer who's sitting somewhere else, maybe in another country in Europe or somewhere else. That's what I'm referring to when I talk about that. So these are the problems that we've decided to address with the language search engine. So it is a computer-assisted translation tool. It is for human translators. It's not a machine translation tool. And it does rely on translation memory. So in that sense, we have a lot of similarities to tools that already exist that are out on the market now. One of the things that we do when we search through the TMs that we think is different is we apply some, like I have there, we apply some standard information retrieval techniques. But one of the things that we do is we don't require the user to create the queries from the source target. And this is actually similar to TM tools today, but it's when we do the demo, you'll see this a little bit better. But the essence is we try and go and find word sequences that are most important in that source text, and then go and search and find related content to that particular sequence. So we give a higher weighting or a higher ranking to the longer sequences. This was kind of the foundation for some of this is just a quote there that maybe many of you have seen before. So One of the things that we decided right up front was that we were going to make it a web-based tool. So that's something that's significantly different, I think, in terms of our tool than most of the TM tools. The reason for that, like I said before, having the appropriate software to handle things is difficult. The other reason is it puts us into a kind of a centralized model, which you'll see. It also helps out a great deal with this collaboration concept that we were talking about before. You could actually leave notes or other things as you're going along on these translations, and someone could come in right behind you as well. These are all things that you'll see in the demo a little bit further. So I apologize. I just kind of want to give you set the groundwork so that you know where we're going. And then the last thing is this centralized model. It's something that we've done. It's kind of something we get for free, I guess, in a sense, by being web-based. But the TMs now reside in some kind of central hub. And by doing that, we can actually search more TMs without having to have this huge management overhead where you have to go and find the appropriate TMs and pull those all in and put them into your particular document that you're translating or whatever. So we have a new concept that we're working on where you can actually share these TMs with, they can remain private, but you can actually share them out to other groups that you feel like, maybe you have some kind of arrangement with them and you want them to see all your, like I said before, medical TM or something, and so you go and you can share that with them, and that's something that's we're just finishing up some of the final stages of right now for release. So those are some things that, yes.
I should have let you finish.
No.
Do you have issues with proprietary information that gets stored in the TMs?
Well,
in other words, if there are multiple sources, for example, translators are working with corporate material from different sources, and these are going into this information is going into the TMs. Is this a...
Yeah, that's a really good point and something that I wanted to put in here. I do have to apologize up front. I didn't spend very much time at all trying to get something ready. But the security is actually another thing that we've addressed as well in our tool. Right now, so back up to the really high latency, the mailing of a CD, for example. If you have, sensitive corporate information, kind of giving the scenario you just said, if you mail that out, you don't know what the other side is doing with it. Maybe they're handing it out to other translators to translate or something else. And so typically they'll put, we would do an NDA between the party that you're mailing it to and then your side. If you're emailing it, maybe the same thing. You do an NDA or something like that. The difference here is that it resides centrally and you grant access appropriately. And that's not the TM part. That's just the document. But the TM works the same way. You can say this document and this TM vault, that's what we call it, are associated somehow. We want you to search this particular TM vault. And if you want, that's where the shared comes in. You can now say, we know it's sensitive information, but we have a certain agreement with this group over here. So we're going to go ahead and share that whole TM vault to someone else and let them essentially assign it to their documents, if that makes sense. Does that come close to answering?
Lock out parts of the TM.
Yes. By default, everybody is denied. All access is denied, except for this other concept that we have, which is very different, which is a public TM vault. And you have the right to go ahead and put all of your translations into a public, for the world to see type of vault. Yes?
Are there any transitivity issues where A trusts B, B trusts C, and A uses a translation memory to figure out something for B, but since A doesn't trust C, when that secondary memory generated from the first one is then sent over to C, some information could leak?
It's difficult to answer. Not really. I mean, because of the fact that everything is denied to begin with, it would be possible for some information to leak if you put things into a vault somehow and didn't scrub it or make sure that it was, not the kind of information you wanted shared. But you have the ability to create additional vaults. So, you could always segregate your data that way. You could say, this is the kind of vault that I want this group to have access to, and it's all been scrubbed and taken care of, and it's only once you grant the access that happens. But I guess I'm not answering your question because I'm
Actually,
thinking
there
it
is no
through.
secondary granting. Say he has a vault and he grants me access. I can't then grant somebody else additional access. So that party C can't get access without party A first deciding that that party C needs to get the access. So
Well-
that is a restriction.
Well, in the shared vault, you can. You can do it one level.
The shared vault, you still have to then grant, party A who puts their data in still has to grant the permission to the parties in there. And if they see something in the party, they don't have to put the data.
B is reusing terminology from C.
Well-
Or translation from C, and then A is able to access them because...
I see your point. Actually, what's happening, though, when access is granted in a vault, say he starts the project, he puts it in. I'll be able to demonstrate this in a few minutes. He assigns a vault that is accessing that. Now, when that person is translating, party C is translating that document, they don't get to access any more vaults other than the one that was assigned to that project and the open public vault out there. They can't, even though they may have on other projects granted access to individual data, it's not granted during this project. So there isn't a secondary party involvement there. They can't even get to some of their own vaults on that. It's the vaults that were assigned by the project manager who put the data in the first place.
So the hack potential would be to have two instances.
The only hack,
Yeah. With one with this permission set for this vault and a separate instance with that one and do a copy paste across. If I wanted to use both and kind of hack the system, I could effectively.
if they
leak the
created
data.
two different logins, they
I
could.
could leak the data that way if I wanted to try
Yeah.
to use other corporate.
The only place in the system that's designed is shared. And in the shared, though, you have decided to create like a group, and you've decided these are known parties, we all have a relationship here. As long as you don't invite somebody outside the group, then you're okay.
So I think that's why the NDA is the important piece.
Correct.
We're talking
And everybody in the
about-
industry
We're talking
does
about
that.
assets here
Yeah.
and how people use or misuse assets as a licensing issue.
So my experience with working with translation companies is pretty dated for the web. But what I sort of experienced was that it was lots of little tiny companies all losing their shirt and all unwilling to cooperate with one another.
Yeah, something.
And the other side was also, sort of being terribly uncooperative. That is, the clients of these companies were not sharing anything either. And in the web, it seems like there's some notion that if we all share everything else, then it's a win-win all the way around. Has the old model that I'm describing disappeared? Are people actually willing to play nice?
Actually, they are. Many of the translation companies you work with today are collaborating with other translation companies. If you go to, say, Lionbridge out there, which is one of the largest, they actually subcontract to probably 50 to 60 different language companies out there on a
They
regular
have
basis.
contract to companies which are not competitors to them.
Yeah, they are competitors.
No, well, they are not competitors, they are vendors for them.
Well, they consider it as vendors, but they often bid on similar contracts. And then what happens is they
But
get
this
bid
model
at
is sort
it.
of dependent on everybody playing nice, right?
Well, it actually doesn't require that, because if you put everything in, right now 90% of the data is in private indexes.
Right, I understand.
Nobody has
If people
access.
are playing nice, then there's really not as much benefit.
To some extent, correct. There isn't
Because it
the
costs
benefit of the
something.
shared knowledge that is growing out there.
It costs something to produce the translation memories.
Correct.
And society benefits more if we share them.
Right.
And if I sit on them and don't share them, then I have to pay the price of creating them, and the benefit is much less.
I think there's two
I
business
thought we could
models
do
though,
it
right?
differently.
You've got your free and open one.
Right.
Where it's all shared and happy and about peace and all of that. And then you've got your private one where you're selling your business licenses, where you're driving your business forward, where I don't have to play nice, I don't have to share. I've got my own corpora of stuff that I control.
That's right.
And so there's a different relationship. But I think they're looking at that reality you're talking
That
about.
first one you're saying, which is,
Right.
I'll build it for myself and the business case is positive,
Yeah.
even just for me.
To support what you were saying earlier, 90% of the market stays in that realm. Only 10% now is currently playing in, let's open it up and share it and make it available to others out there. So to substantiate what you're saying, that's what we're seeing in the actual data collection and who's putting their data where. But we have both models in there, and it works either way. I agree with you. A little more sharing, a little more value to the community as a whole. So.
It seems like you have sort of some company that can be private and keep all their corporate and get to use the public shared one. Is there some sort of way you could provide rewards to people for sharing?
Well, we're working on some things like that a little bit. We are actually finding several companies. We're working with Adobe right now, and they're in the process of putting it. We use 1.4 million segments of translation out there. of content in 10 different languages. Some of the bigger companies are stepping up and wanting to do that kind of thing, but they're doing it for a little bit of an internal reason. In that, if you're Adobe out there and you have a software, and this is really an example that Microsoft did early on when you made your translation memories available to a lot of the public out there, anyone developing software related to it used all the same terminology. So the switching cost sometimes in a foreign language is not just going to a new software that's somewhat related, but all the new terminology. Search is now query. Query is now find, and you get confused. Is it really different and stuff? And by sharing that data, Adobe and some of these companies are saying, well, we want our products to be interchangeable foreign language-wise with other systems, and it's easier for people to move around in it. It makes our products more user-friendly when we come into them there. So that's one of the things that are happening out there. So we're seeing a little more of the push along that line, that more data is going to start coming that direction. But you're right, it's an industry that's still under flux. And this is the first model that's actually gone to the internet with it and had a web-based system on it so that you could even really do this.
Before that, it wasn't practical to play nice.
Yeah, it wasn't really practical.
It's practical to play nice, but they're still not doing it because they're not used to it.
Yeah, but more and more of them are actually moving up. We have several of the client side is actually where we're seeing the movement further and faster. For instance, Adobe knows also that not all the material that's presented for them is actually produced by them. Somebody may write an article about a new feature of a product that comes out in Japan. Well, he doesn't have access, and then somebody else translates it into Chinese, and that person in China doesn't have access to how the translated content was used, the name of the new product, and it gets translated, and somebody searches on the web and doesn't find it as a result of a mistranslation or the wrong set of characters associated with it. By sharing that information, the access from the public side to the company becomes greater, and it enhances their internet presence out there. So.
For those companies that aren't choosing to play nice so far and are not sharing their data, whether they be translation companies or clients, what are the primary reasons that they give for not wanting to share it? They say it's privacy, but what does that mean?
It's kind of funny. They think they have a proprietary advantage. They spent money on that translation, and they don't want anyone else. They don't want their competing company to maybe leverage their translation to translate their own stuff and get to market, along with them or something like that.
It's not really about is it about concern that people will find out about products that they have kind of online and things like that?
Not usually the case. It's funny. Rory Cowan, I was speaking at an event. He's the CEO of Lionbridge, and he was saying, it's kind of funny. They'll lock us down under an NDA, and we'll translate all this thing while it's in translation, but then the next day they publish the entire thing on the web. And they still lock us down after that. It's not so it is a confusing industry in that respect. Really, there isn't really a new feature. Anything that's not going to come out. PR and marketing is already announcing stuff before it ever gets out there anyway. So by limiting it and saying that one human or a team of humans that are speaking that language can't see this data, or talk about it, or translate it, they're really not locking anything down. And more the clients, like I said, are understanding that. And they're moving away from the LSPs are trying to the language service providers still trying to control that a little bit. But
I think we should probably go on.
Yeah.
Show what you've
So
got.
the demo. So the demo, yeah.
No, this is good, and I appreciate the questions on it. I'm going to switch over here to
pick up on this discussion after they've shown you what they've got.
Yeah, so the technology runs in a web here. So, part of what we're showing here, this is really what we call our dashboard. To actually run and manage projects in a web environment, there also has to be workflow associated with it, not just the translation tool. So we have things that, projects, these are jobs that are assigned to me. If I can hover over different things here, let me just go over here. I can see statistics on a job. For instance, this is the job I just loaded in there. So it just tells me quick, like once it loaded this job up there, I got a repetition in there of 4 words, 1%, 163 words in 7 segments or exact matches. This is a typical translation memory, and then I have no match on another 602 words. Now we actually have tools that are actually going to help with that 602 as well. So.
Just to put this in context, you said assigned to me. Are you a translator or a PM?
This case, I'm a translator. So there's 2 cases. I have a project manager here and a translator up here. So I can look at my dashboard, I can close it down. Let's say I wasn't a translator, I was only a project manager. I could close this down. Let me just get on this. And I can just look at projects. These are projects I've created. I can look at there, I can see the current status of projects, because now we're in a web-based environment real time, every paragraph that's translated, every sentence that's translated, this percentage meter will grow on that. And I can see the actual, I can go into the projects and see the progress on each reviewer and everything else out there. One of the things that currently the industry doesn't give you, that collaboration, the ability to know in real time what's going on, but we can also, now that we're in this web-based environment and the tool, we can do what we call really team translation. And that's the concept where I throw, we have a client that wants 3 million words done in 3 languages, and they want it done in 30 days. How many localization people here want to take on that project? Is there anyone? No hands, right? So it's a tough project. What your typical method, anyone want to share the typical method of taking on a project like that for a second? Any ideas?
Split it up.
Split it up, put a lot of people on it. You have to send parts of the document multiple directions. What happens to consistency typically on that?
Forget about it.
Forget about it. So what do you do at the end? You got one person who's supposed to have this mental capacity to literally, as they read it, remember every phrase and expression and make them all the same as he reviews, or her. Are they very good at it? Is it really easy to do? And think about it. If you had to review at the end a 3 million word project, could you do that in the 30 days? You know, it's kind of tough to accomplish, isn't it? Well, in this environment here, in real time, they'll see exactly what everyone's translated down to the phrase and word level, and it'll be fed to them. I'll show that to you in a minute. But you can put 25 translators on the same project, and it's not divided up other than where they're working, and they'll see in real time. And I'll show that to you in a minute. Go ahead.
Translation memories typically store translations of full sentences. Now, you're talking about translations of words and phrases. How do you get the information on that finer grain?
Excellent. That's what I'm going to demonstrate to you. Basically, what we index still at the sentence, but we index down to the word level, and then we rebuild back up to any combination in there. To give you an example of difference mathematically between a language search engine and a translation memory tool, if you had a paragraph with 4 sentences in it, the TM tool would have stored 4 sentences, and it would leverage those 4 sentences if they were reused, either an exact match or a fuzzy match. Is that correct? So you've leveraged 4. Now, some tools out there have added some good phrase things in there, but typically you have to go in and build that vocabulary of phrases in there, and it may have added in that 50-word paragraph of 4 sentences another 10 or 12 phrases or expressions that you would then reuse. So now it's up from 4 to 16 or so reusable elements in that translation. That's translation memory, but typically those single phrases have to be put in the database as if they were the same as whole sentences, and they're leveraged out of context as well. And so the challenge you have is sometimes those phrases in a new context actually mean something different, and that's not really fed to the translator. In our system, we do everything in context. You take a 50-word paragraph of 4 sentences, our system can leverage, if they were needed, up to 1,250 unique word combinations throughout that paragraph. So that's the difference, is any combination of words are now viable. But one thing that we did to make that work, because now the typical human isn't going to know if they exist or they ask for them, is we made it all automatic. It's going to look for them automatically and show you the best stuff and rank it for you just like a regular internet search engine might. So I'll demonstrate that a little bit and I'll give you a feel for it. So this is the project management window. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here. Anyone wants more detail on that. It'll also manage all your vendors. You put them under Translators tab out there. All you have to have is their email. They get on an account. You can assign them by just click. When you actually create a project, it'll create a drop down of all the people you know in that language, and you just pick the person and it emails them and they just log in and translate. They have nothing to send to anyone, no documents. It's a one-time upload to get it started. Download when you're done on the translation. You can do multiple languages with multiple documents in the same project, all interchanged in there. This is a job I just assigned myself. I'm just going to click on it. By clicking on that job, so if I was emailed, I would have got an email that says I got a new job. I look on there, there's a new job. I click on that. I can see who gave it to me. It's now loading up the translation tool environment, which also runs on the web. There's nothing to install on anyone's computer. There's nothing that's downloaded. Translators have to have nothing more than a decent web browser and some internet connection. Now, we have also done some things for the latency of transmitting information. We do see it in context, the source window on the top left. We have a translation window down here on the bottom left. And then we have what we call hits over here. This is where it's gone out and researched the information. And as you can see in this situation, I'm glad to zoom this in for anyone that would like to see it a little clearer. Let me zoom it the other way. Now, what am I doing here?
All the gray hair.
All right. Yeah, I'm there with you, so that's all right. So basically, we've got, let me just make this full size here. This is now showing the context here. I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to turn off saving my translation at this time to translation memory because I don't want to have my demo all of a sudden have everything translated and then I do it again and I don't have it. But that's also another feature we've put in there because sometimes you're translating documents like somebody's birth certificate and you get to their name and their social security number or birth date or certain personal information. You can just turn it off. The rest of the document is still available as translation memory, but those little elements that you don't want to have translated or ever seen by anyone again never show up. So it allows you to protect what goes in and what doesn't. When I set up this project, I set up the project with a translation and several reviews. It's currently telling me that I'm assigned to do the translation there, and that's in the tab. But somebody as a reviewer can come in directly behind me, right, sentence by sentence, and start reviewing. One of that collaborative latency that's out there is that, I used to be a project manager. I've been in the industry 27 years. I've done everything from top to bottom on translation, been a translator. You get your project and you send it off to one translator. Until they get it done, you get it back. Maybe they send it to you in segments. Then you can send those off to a reviewer. They get done, then you send it off to the next reviewer. And there's this lag in between. And when I'm a little older, we didn't have email to get most of it around. Okay, we had to literally DHL it most of the time on CDs. And it was to get it there. It was a week to get it to Nepal and some of the places that I was translating with. And then, it was a week to get it back. So I had this latency on these projects. Somebody at one time, I remember our corporate controller said, well, we want the contract signed before they start. And they were adding 2 weeks more of mailing time in the middle of it. And I said, this is a large project. You just add 13 months to this project if you had those contracts signed. He backed off and decided not to have them signed. That latency is a little different, but even now in the email age, you have that. With this tool, I can start translating, and as soon as I start translating, that version reviewer that's assigned there will immediately get an email that says there has a project available you can start working on. They can click on it and review right behind me, and as soon as that reviewer starts, the second reviewer can start. And so they can literally overlap and run in conjunction, so they're really only a couple sentences behind. About the time it takes to do translation, you're done. Go ahead.
Does that concurrent reviewing interfere with the ability to revise translation?
They can jump back and forth and do the revisions as they need. What also happens in there, we've had a little thing called versions in here. I'm not going to probably have time to demonstrate that today, but I actually can stack up and have a person look through there and say, I want to see the translator in relation to all the reviewers. I click on that versions and it will actually let me see from the final version to the translator all changes made, and the translator can use that as feedback to make them better, to say this is what people are always changing on my stuff and I can agree or disagree with it. In a collaborative situation, they can go back and reconcile each other's differences. They can leave notes behind that says, I disagreed with this, I've made this change. And or you can even have an analyst, somebody that's a project manager, jump in real time, look at a problem the translator's making, jump ahead, leave a note, do a find, search for the next occurrence of it, leave a note that says, I changed it in your last one, when you get here, fix it. I want it to be this way. So you don't have to wait till the end to get the feedback loop from the client or anyone else in there. It's a complete collaborative environment. And one of the things, speeding up translation just happens by taking out that sequential Gantt chart type, with the delays in between, can take a lot of time off a project. So, another question.
You're going to have, let's say, 5 translators, 1 reviewer. 5 translators are putting text in the system. The reviewer starts reviewing right after that, 5 times faster than they translate.
Correct.
Haven't you lost for the reviewer, haven't you lost you're translating one sentence from here, you're reviewing one sentence from here, one sentence from here, one sentence from here. You have lost all the
continuities you're looking for. Yeah, because you're jumping around now if you do that. Now, if you wanted to go to the extreme, the reviewer could jump around like that. So there would be, I would agree with you, some continuity. He can still see the contextual version of it. Typically what happens in the tool right now is there's a slight latency in that the translator will translate maybe a few pages, then the reviewer starts, and he just translates in succession. And then if you really had a high-speed project on that, that reviewer could jump to that next couple pages of that other translator and follow those and on down the line. But one of the things the tool will do is these hits over here. These phrases and expression will show him to make him consistent and accurate with his own reviews, with the changes and what the translators are doing. And I'll show you that. We actually, let me do a little bit more demo on the tool, and I think you'll see the vision of that a little bit. I've just given you kind of a broad spectrum of a different approach of what this technology does there. I'm going to start translating here, and now the print's really small for here, so my eyes are going to be a little tough. I'm going to just grab the date, drop it down in here. It found a hit over here. It said corn filed suit against a food manufacturer, which was linguistically the best match it found from the data related to corn filed suit against a Dallas food manufacturer. Now, the example I'm using here is real-world stuff from the Attorney General's websites of news cases against criminal activity that he has out there. And these are then data that he's done on previous documents. It's interesting. Stuff that not typically would use for a TM tool, you now can use. Literally every translation you work on is viable when you can leverage down to phrases and expressions inside of it, as opposed to just whole sentences out there. So I can go down here, and hopefully there's somebody in here that speaks Spanish very well, and they'll validate or improve my translation as I go along. My languages are Vietnamese and Chinese. I have studied Spanish and a few others, but not to the level. So now I've translated that by really leveraging this previous translation here and adding of Dallas on the end of it. Grammatically, I'm okay. Is everybody okay with that? Any Spanish speakers? I got some Spanish speakers nodding and saying I'm all right. So it found an exact match. As you see, it put it in there automatically. All I have to do is next. So that's your typical TM type environment. You know, the dates have been done before, so it's pulling them up. In their website, they actually repeated the titles just for the sake of time. I'm just going to jump past. I could really, translate it again. And as you know, I remember I told you I was turned off the example here, so I wasn't actually retaining this memory right now to feed it again in there. So it found another exact match. Let me just move on a little bit. There are a few in here. I think there's a couple more here. Let me finish these. Another exact match. Let me move on. And another one. Let me move on again. I'll get into this. Okay, here's what it is. This is a situation where, again, remember there's a portion of this document, actually it was like 70% of it was not repeat sentences. Now, what can the tool do to help the translator there? So in this situation, it found some phrases in there. Inspections by the Texas Department of Health failed to remedy numerous deficiencies, including operating in unsanitary conditions. These are expressions that probably represent about 60% of that sentence on the left over there, that a translator now immediately has the answers to those things in context, in usage. The language search engine does contextual type searching there. It tries to find the same words, same meaning. It's not always going to be right, okay? The reason is usually the data is the problem. It's trying to do its best estimation of it. It's a computer, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to understand the language all the time. But the concept is that if it does exist in the memory, even in a small segment, and it's related to that, it will find it and it will rank the best hits. As I scroll down this set of hits here, we display about 10 here. We can see the quality of the hits and the amount of information are a little lower, but they're still, here's based on inspections by. It's found something else down there that wasn't in the upper elements here, but it's ranked a little lower because it's less of the text that was translated over there than the other one. So the concept is, and here's the difference between traditional TM, is now we're not only, back to your earlier question, how do you leverage down those phrases and expressions? This is the piece here. We're not leveraging just the repeat sentences. But we also have another advantage here is that traditionally in TM, if I wanted to do this manual and say 60% of it was translated before and it's going to be exact match, the other 40% I'm on my own. It's usually in the TM tool no match and the translator's just translating. Now, I can not only leverage that for that other 40%, I can leverage things from all the different TMs of the entire company. You could take every document ever translated by Microsoft, and this would search everything to see if there were phrases and expressions defined at a time. Not just the one TM that's associated with that one document that had those 60% matches.
When you, in this user interface, like when you highlight the based on in the English, could you also somehow highlight the corresponding target?
If we improve the artificial intelligence, and if we assume that translators always translated it right, and that machine translation can do similar things, try to find the equivalences out there, we could. But we do know that what it'll do one thing is that it will slow down the system a little bit to add that. What we've learned is that human translators actually know the language. And so for them, glancing up here and seeing based on inspections by, I can go, I can grab that real quick, like mentally fast enough. Or I can even identify that they missed something in there. The previous translation didn't translate something. So we typically haven't done that for the sake of speed and because we're not trying to replace the human.
Did it offline?
Possibly.
Because you already have the translation memories.
Yeah. The other thing, too, though, on this is that this is a dynamic environment of document and content that's growing and new words come up. Anytime the system would not have, say, a new term that is now occurring in this situation out there and translators have come up and coined a new translation, that identification system and matching those things might be a little behind. So, but it's possible. We're just not in there now.
I have one question. So, everything probably can be translated in more than one way.
Correct.
So do you anticipate anything like having more than one destination translation in your system?
We do. And what this system will do is it'll actually analyze it. It'll put, let's say there was 3 different ways to translate based on inspections by, and they were in there. And all of them were valid. They'll show up in here, actually, if that was what was relevant, in order next to each other. But we actually do one other thing, is the users as a whole can actually choose which one they like. So that everybody keeps choosing number 2 over number 1. This system actually will analyze that probability of choice and start moving number 2 up to number 1 and bring 2 down. So it'll still provide all the options. The human makes the choice, but the group of translators that are using language are the ones that will actually dictate what the ranking is a little bit. So.
This is kind of a related question, actually. Is there a concern that the first person to translate something will choose a particular translation, even though maybe there are some better ones, and that would have a snowballing effect when everybody else just keeps using it? And
yeah.
So would there be a value in, say, asking different translators to independently come to the same translation before recommending?
Typically, what's happening in those situations is the person's translating a term in a document. They usually hit it early on. They have a limited environment. Words are defined by the company they keep, kind of thing. And they pick a term there based on that environment of knowledge that they have on it. As they go through the document, they see more and more context that's in, and all of a sudden, voila, they realize that they've had the wrong term. Now, they can, in this system, immediately go back and change it. See, what happens is humans won't just keep grabbing the term. This requires the human. That's part of the why we haven't selected maybe the text down here, too, is the humans going in and looking, is that right? These are professionals working on it. Their job's on the line. And translators don't like to agree. I often said if you put 4 translators in a room together and try to come up with one translation, you'll get 5. They just don't like to agree. So they have no problem disagreeing with each other. So that really hasn't been the latent problem. The problem has been they see the new context, they put the new term in, and then without this kind of tool, they don't know where to go fix it in the past because it's been too long and too many documents and stuff. So in this system, we've actually built that in there to solve that problem the other way. And that is we just click on the edit and we hit find here. It opens up this. I can search source or target any source in this, and it will go back forwards and backwards and jump to all the occurrences. I can go back and quickly change the old ones or even analyze all the context. Now those previous translations will actually show up in my hits here, so I'll actually see how I translated it last time and realize, hey, I didn't have the right one. And so what happens is translators make better decisions because they have more knowledge, and we actually have a different situation in that we're solving that problem. So.
Another question. Do you do any kind of validation of the data that you have, like, in your system? Suppose we have one long sentence. It's been translated one way. And we have 2 parts of this sentence, I mean, to some degree parts, translated in absolutely different way.
Perfect.
Now, can we, like...
This system will find both of those and show them to you. I can show you a different example in a second here.
So those 2 are parts of this,
yeah.
Bigger one.
Correct.
And it's been translated differently. Should it, like, been...
Well, yes.
One of the things that happens as well is part of that ranking is the usage. And so if you were to use one translation over the other, over and over again, it would start to always rank higher than the other one, and it would eventually, kind of float to the top, so to speak. Does that kind of address what you were talking about?
I'm just going to jump ahead here because I know it's the exact match. Let me jump to another project, and I'll show you some examples of that one here in a second here. But go ahead. Another question?
What I'm seeing is you're proposing translations when there is a perfect match. You're not proposing anything when there is a fuzzy match. So
yeah. It has to be a complete exact match. If there's one letter, one word wrong, it'll show up over here, and then I have to analyze it and decide if I want to put it in there.
But that's, usually what a translator wants is a proposal, a translation, so they can edit it.
Correct.
I mean, they have to go to the mouse. Well, translators hate the mouse.
This all has hotkeys too. I can hit Control-Shift-N to do that. I can hit Alt-1. I can grab any one of these. I have hotkeys for all of them.
Can you grab a whole proposal? Oh.
Yeah. Let's say I wanted number 1 in there. I'm not going to use the mouse. I'm going to use it. Let me just, number 1's now in there. I can then edit it, modify it, grab pieces. I grab pieces, I grab whole things, whatever I want.
In your analysis, you're not showing any fuzzy match percentage.
We're not showing the percentage on that. We actually are working on something that we're just about ready to release that's going to be the equivalent of the fuzzy. Actually, though, it's going to be looking at these exact phrases. So it's not going to be, sometimes fuzzy matching is a statistical relationship between, if I had to change what percentage of these letters would I have to change to get this other sentence equal. And sometimes, you know, they don't mean the same thing. You get a fuzzy match and it's garbage, you know, and the translation, you throw it all out and start from scratch. So we don't do that fuzzy search, but we will do percentages on this. Let me switch to this other document that will show some of those real quick. Like, I'm going to jump to a different job and show you some different kinds of matches on that. Let's jump to this abridged rules here for a second. Let me go back up the top and just show some hits. Let me just go to 1. Did I get that? Oh, I typed it down here, sorry.
You're blocking the pop-up there.
Huh?
The pop-up, you're blocking the pop-up.
Oh, I'm blocking pop-ups with my Internet Explorer. Let me see if I can, let's do that now. So I'm saying, where's my box? So, all right, there we go. Jump back to the beginning here. Let's hit next real quick. Like, so there's some exact matches. Let's just go. Some of this is translated too, so let me just jump ahead here, see if I can catch some things. I'm not sure where the examples are. Okay, this is an example of multiple sentences having pieces of it. So the third prize is a 250 cash, second prize a 2,000, one grand prize of 5,000, represents about 90% of that sentence over there. And all the elements I need is to translate. It's pretty simple stuff, but if it occurs, it will find it. Is there a question?
More helpful for editors or translators if you provide some kind of, you know, the linguistically meaningful constituent highlighted.
Say again, please.
I mean, if a translator see linguistically meaningful constituent highlighted, that's more, I don't know, intuitive.
So you're saying if it was highlighted in the foreign language?
Instead of just randomly.
Like you had products and.
Yes.
Products and.
Oh, yeah, no.
Would not be very interesting.
No, that's exactly right. So what this thing is doing is it's trying to find any kind of words down to the smallest stuff. So what is happening when you get down to that previous example you saw where products and were there, which were really linguistically relevant and stuff like that. The translator, that's kind of noise. He just has to ignore it. But because the system in the computer doesn't know. Now what happens is if there was better information, it would have found it. But that was as good as it got because there wasn't enough data in there to find anything from that. So translator just ignores what they don't want to look at and stuff like that. It doesn't slow them down any out there.
Yeah, well, like the third prize is will be. But will be is not going to help a lot of languages because it's dependent on the verb that follows the be.
Right, and there's conjugation things out there, but in a lot of times he may be able to grab the whole piece there and throw it out. So, you know, over here, third prize is of, and so he has to grab the elements that means it. Go ahead.
It's not absolutely useless, right?
Yeah. We agree. Yes, not useless.
Here's the basic concept behind the tool. As a translator, do you speak another language as a translator, or
Not a translator.
doesn't work? A translator is basically as good as their knowledge. The more knowledge, more experience they are, the better they are at translating, the faster they translate. This system is only doing one thing. It's now capturing all the knowledge, not only their own, and gives them photographic recall of anything that might be related to what they've translated in the past, but it's now giving them photographic recall of what anyone else has translated that's either in that private repository, that company's data or whatever. And so it's just feeding them knowledge. Ultimately, the human makes all the decisions of what goes down here. We only put the exact match in there. They'll decide, I don't need the will be. I had third prizes of 250 cash. I'll grab those elements. Or he just looks at it and just types it. But he's confirming that he's using still the same terminology that was used before. He doesn't have to go find a consistency. He doesn't have to look things up in a dictionary. It's just feeding him knowledge. And it's in contextual use. So
in the case where there really is nothing useful in the TM,
then you'll get either no match.
But I mean, do you still incorporate other tools like translation dictionaries and machine translation and things like that?
Very good. Two things. One is you go to the glossaries, which are dictionaries here. This dictionary program will actually take and it allows you to put multiple dictionaries in there again. And what it's doing, it's going to create a custom dictionary for every sentence you appear. So it will stop, and so if it isn't appearing in your translation memories, but it's in your dictionaries or your glossaries, you can build individual ones for individual projects that have unique terminology. This is all allowed in the system. You can even start a project, create a blank glossary, and you can drag and drop terms into it on the fly while you're working and build the glossary from beginning to end and hand it off with the client when you're done with the job. That's all in it. MT, let me answer the rest of his question here. The MT part of that, this is what we're working on right now. Back here in the hits, we're actually designating a small section here. This top one is going to be a little box that will be automated translation, machine translation. And what it is every time a sentence comes up, the translator could actually see the machine translation of it. They could hit Alt-0, pop it in, and edit it if they want to. And then one of the things that Aaron wanted to talk about too is that the concept that we will do phrasal refinement learning from that. Meaning that, let's say that they grab the machine translation, put it in, they edit it. Well, when they edit it, we're capturing in the background those edit changes. And then we're feeding them back to the machine translation to help with future learning on the MT so that it can actually be smarter the next time it comes around. Creating a feedback loop with the humans. The humans still decide if they want to use that. And we're finding, well, we're still in the experimental stage. We're doing some stuff with Adobe on that. We'll see if it comes out. But the assumption has been is when they have a little bit and it's pretty close and it's pretty good, rather than hand typing the sentences, they're often hit Alt-0, grab it, fix it, and then we got learning for the MT, and we sped up the translator a little bit because the translator's paid by the word. He says, hey, sped me up, I'll take it. But if they don't like it, if it's garbage, they look at the other phrases or they just translate from scratch. They're on their own, they keep going. It doesn't slow them down. So we are putting the MT in there, and we already do have a complete. Now that glossary dictionary thing, when I was a Vietnamese translator, I had 13 different dictionaries I refer to. Now if I put them all in there, this would actually collate them together as one for every sentence I have, eliminate all duplicates so I have all the different terms there that I needed from all my dictionaries. Save me looking at multiple ones. Back in the paper days when I was doing that, it was about 2.5 minutes per entry I had to look up. And if I had to look it up in multiple dictionaries to try to find what I was learning, it was a long time. Yeah, the concept here is we make research and knowledge up to the internet age so that the human can actually react better and work with it. And we're also feeding back for the machine translates too. Now you had a question as well.
Actually, now I have 3.
Great, good.
So the first one is, why can't the user see their entire target? Why are they only allowed to see one sentence at a time?
Well, there is context around this sentence. I'm in the middle of a paragraph.
I want to see my target, my full target.
You want to see the entire document, is what you're saying.
I'm working on.
Right. Yeah.
What I'm doing.
Absolutely. Now you can actually go back to the thing and you can we have a PDF download of it where you could literally have a PDF view of the entire document, which is the whole document. Oh, say the target. Oh, I got to get your wording right. Okay.
That's a feedback that we've gotten a few times. You can have this contextual view, but you can also have the PDF of the target, and you can grant the right
you can turn in to show context here too.
In a future release. We're not there yet, so this is what we have for now.
Okay, and the second question is, so with these hits that you get, is there a way that the user can say, just give me the top 20% of it? Because that's a lot. A lot to scroll through, and it takes a lot.
The interesting thing is we only give you 10 hits. Okay? If there's 10 existent out there. So if I scroll down the bottom here, typically
You get no more than 10?
you get no more than 10 on a hit. That's the natural function of what we're doing there. We have ranked them as, of course, the most relevant on it. Now what will happen though is most people never leave the first 3. The ranking and the searching is good enough that I don't have anyone ever really scrolling. Okay? But I'll scroll down to show you how that looks there. So let's just scroll down and see some other things. You see the quality of these hits are going down quite a bit. Now this one did have 10, but if I hit load more results, now it's showing the next ones if I want them. Okay, but people really don't do that because the quality of these hits, they're not finding anything below the top 3 is really anything that they wanted any better because the engine did a good job of ranking it.
Can you go up to the first one again?
Can I what?
Go up to the first one again?
I can go right up to the top. Yep.
Tim, there was another question.
Another question too, so yeah. But should I finish her last 2 questions before we move on, or do you want to go?
Yeah,
It might be related.
The problem I'm seeing here is that, for example, if I have translated something like in the same form of the English sentence, and what you're proposing is something that is, in my opinion, right now, pretty much useless.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Where it doesn't become useless is when they see the speed of their actual translation and human translators not spending time research.
The thing is, for example, you have...
Is it useless? Let me ask the question. Because
what the translator wants is to have something that is as similar. So if you are telling the translator he's going to be charged, he's going to be paid less because you are proposing that there.
No, it doesn't say that.
Well, but someone has to make money out of this. Make money, lower prices or
correct.
Whatever. Right now, a translator, if I am a translator, what I have there is not very useful because, first of all, it's not in the same order as in the source.
Yeah, you're right. I got to start here, here, and here. So.
Exactly.
Sure.
So that's
they didn't figure out the order.
That's a lot of time wasted for the translator. He has to read over 3 sentences, pick up a piece from here, a piece from there, copy paste.
Let's pretend he didn't have this at all.
Yeah.
Now what is he going to do? He's going to start.
He's going to copy. He's going to copy.
No, he's not going to copy anything. It doesn't exist.
He's going to. He's going to copy the. What I do is copy the source sentence into that box and overwrite. In the target language.
Or he could just read it and type as he goes.
And then if I'm not sure about a word, like a worded, I'm not sure how it's translated for this
There's
project.
nothing that keeps him from doing what you're saying on that. He can jump in there and start translating anytime he wants to if he doesn't feel like the information is helpful. The only thing it does is that it's knowledge again. Is there more than one way to say award in French? Okay. Would it be helpful? Really what happens here is it's a quality issue. We're seeing consistency, which is also helpful related to machine translation, in that if translators actually translated consistently, even in groups, the same kind of phrase, the statistical average for the machine translation to come out and do a better job actually is improved too. So
the thing is, if you would you would be highlighting what is highlighted in English, highlighting in the target, it would be way more helpful.
yeah, if I told the translator what the translation was.
And then also, if you could propose, even if it's kind of wrong, if you could propose those parts together in the target box.
Yeah. What you're now feeding on towards is machine translation of it. So. Yeah, because I'm taking the elements and putting them there, right?
It's kind of...
It's close to it.
It's in the middle of...
Yeah, it is. It's not complete machine.
It's a segment, a phrase alignment that then you are able to propose.
Well, I appreciate those suggestions, and those are things that we can look at. That'll be good. Another question over here,
Having spent far more years of my life as a human translator working with paper resources.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a situation where there is an annual competition, where there is a previous history of how this terminology has been expressed.
Right.
And you want to know that it is, the first prize in English is the grand prize in Grand Prix. And the second prize might have some other,
choice of terminology.
Some other choice of terminology that was used in that particular, a silver ribbon or whatever, would be, for that particular competition, appropriate.
Yeah.
Just having that information available instead of having to thumb through 250 pages of previous of previous translations of these announcements over the last 10 years to find the right term.
So you find it valuable to know what the last time was.
To glance at it and say, yes, okay, those are what the terms are.
Type and keep going. Yeah.
Keep going, yeah.
So you basically disagree with his...
I would disagree. Just being able to glance at it and say, yeah, okay, now I understand what the terms are.
Does the phrase matching between the source and the target suggestions give a preference to content words as opposed to grammatical words?
Typically, when you're looking at the words in there, the phrases, the grammatical comes with them because we do not have any stop words. We don't eliminate anything. So we'll actually find the same, if there were, say, I'll give you an example. If there were two hits out there that would be, one is the same words in the same order with the same grammatical structure, another one is the same words, maybe modified order, different grammatical structure. This hit with the same word, same order, same grammatical structure will be found before this one and ranked ahead of it.
Are there cases where the top ranked matches have mainly grammatical words that are in common, where the lower ranked ones?
Typically not. If you're not going to find a better hit lower on that has more relative content on it because of the way it's ranking in there. So, and it has to do with the fact that if you have a longer string and it's more of the information, it's going to be bigger than something. It's just grammatical linking words typically seem to be disparate. They're not all right next to each other, so it won't happen. So.
Well, you have multiple TMs associated with your project.
Correct. It's currently searching 90 million words, 130 language pairs on the fly every time we hit next. So.
All right. It'll be relevant for the translator to know where it came from, when it was done,
Good.
How trustworthy it is.
One thing is showing right now that these hits are coming from a closed TM vault that's associated with this project. So I know it's the assigned project. If it didn't have that, I know it's coming from the open source out there that could be anyone, so it may be a little more suspect than my internal system on that. We are working towards on the open side. We've had a suggestion along that line where instead of this being the closed vault on this, it will actually, if entities want to and they put it in public, say you're Apple, and you put it out there as your data for Apple, it'll actually show the Apple logo and the word Apple here above that. So you'll know that this data came from Apple. this data came from Morona. If they want to share it, if they want to still keep it ambiguous, then it'll be unassigned. And then the translator can make a decision. That's a suggestion we have, we just haven't put into it yet. So.
And that's all that was suggested, not like time or who the translator was.
Well, the other thing you could put in is the name of the translator if you wanted to. Yeah. So that's still open on it. It doesn't have the time of when it was translated on that right now.
Doing more research would actually be useful.
Yeah, and we could definitely do that. That's a great suggestion in addition to what we're thinking about there. That's very viable in what we're doing because we do stamp everything as we go along.
So I think one relevant thing here is the difference between a fuzzy match and the combination of phrasal matches. For example, in this sentence right here, a fuzzy match normally wouldn't have gotten this, right? Because the order of the clauses is completely different, right? I mean, I think that's one of the more interesting pieces here, where you're extracting from text, phrases that again you wouldn't otherwise get with fuzzy match system.
Right.
That's the whole key here, right?
This is related to your name again. Dion. This is related to what you were saying, whether or not it's relevant or not. But just to reiterate here, if you notice this one here, this example that Steve's pointing out, the contents open to residents of Canada, the "the's" missing, but contents open to residents of Canada, that's the same. But what happens next is it says who are not an employer or domiciled with an employee of the sponsor is actually the third element in this sentence over here. And then this last piece, and who own, live, or work in a farm in Canada, is the middle element here. A fuzzy match engine would not find that hit because they would take too many changes to that document, would shut the percentage down to about 40-50% match on it and keep it from being a hit. The translator could still use that information. I could grab these segments over here, reorder them faster than I could type them and move on. And I've now created the new form that maybe they wanted to turn it around. I could still be truthful to that and make that change. So this tool finds more information than it would normally be out there. And sometimes the information is, like you said, it's not relevant. It's like that contest stuff. Although you disagreed and you said, well, I'd like to know what those choices were last time so I get them the same and I'm not throwing out to the people different things. And that's helpful. It does help consistency, but you're right. Sometimes... Yeah, it just takes a translator a second on it. One of the things we had, I know the suggestion was to have the human, the computer try to highlight this. One of the things that translators hate is fixing something that's wrong. Any translators agree with that in here? Stuff? You hate being given something and having to fix it. Have you ever had fuzzy matches that you just say, well, I didn't even put it in there. I got to delete it and put it in. It's very frustrating. If the computer's wrong, it tends to get downgraded as a value to you as your translator, if you're a human translator. With the system actually not highlighting this, we're letting the human make the choice. We haven't made a mistake that this matches that, and it's the best hit and ranked it in there. So we try to do one thing. We've kind of had one principle in our development is that we don't want to do anything in the system unless we can do it better and faster than the human. The question is, would you be able to go out and find from previous contest rules for this organization that sentence and those different things faster and with more accuracy than this? No. But can the computer do that? Yes. So that's what we're feeding it, and the human makes that decision of whether or not they want to use it on that. So, and if they don't want to use it, then that's fine.
I see you have "of" on there.
Yeah, exactly. Garbage, noise words.
Right, but you're going to get, for every sentence, you're going to get "with" and. Going back to your sentence, we should be getting "with" and. We should be getting "who are." We should be getting "not" and. Because these are very common sequences.
Right.
It should be found. And you don't want to.
But it's just
with and's not in this one, but yeah.
You don't. I mean, you don't want to eliminate those.
Well, here's the challenge of eliminating them. When you're doing contextual searching, is "on" relevant to the context of it? If it was part of this sentence up here as opposed to this here, is "of" relevant to the way those words are and the meaning? Is it helping the ranking? Yes. We could put in stop words for the common stuff like that, and sure, it would blank out the noise words, but when we do so, we actually lower the quality of the hits that we can give you here on the top if the data is relevant. So what happens is translators are getting used to the concept. They're saying, I'm not going to see "of" on and then try to figure out what that is here to make sure I know it, because you ignore it, The concept is feeding information. It's like going to the internet search engine. I search on Microsoft, MSN, and I find some hits. Now, I'll see some things in there and say, well, no, those are not the hits I want.
Your ranking will help, because the "of" on, if it were by itself in that window, should have gone way to the bottom.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I could scroll down here and show you that there might be some really garbage ones down here that are, that's getting worse, isn't it? Yeah. And
maybe
we could...
Tim, can I...
Go ahead, please.
Maybe if I could tie, was it Carla, is that right? If I could tie back a comment she made earlier. the of-ons on there, for example, when that's the only thing that's matched, we are going to give a threshold to the translator. We're working on that right now, where they can say this percentage match that Tim was describing earlier. You can say, don't give me anything below a certain threshold. And what will happen is these will just kind of disappear. And then you'll only get the ones where of-on had some significance in the earlier, bigger match, but it will be highlighted there. And we decided that was kind of the hybrid of those two, giving the stop word versus...
Yeah. We didn't want to take them out because they were valuable to the other side of it. So it's kind of like a give and take, just like when I go to the internet and I search on Microsoft MSN to find something. I see a whole bunch of hits that really aren't relevant to me. I scan through them fast, jump on the ones I want. So this is an information tool. That's all it is. We're making the translators smarter and faster because we give them the information faster. I mean, when I was in the old days in my research papers in college, I didn't have the internet. I'd have to go to the library. I'd have to check magazines. I'd read forever to get enough content to write a paper. Now people go on the internet and find so much information. They still have to sift through the noise that's associated with that when there's too much data, and we have a little bit of it here too.
So you have a website. Do you also have a web service? So like, let's say I like a lot of the things. I like the glossary. I like the hits, and I want to be able to rank it, do my user preferences. For some reason, I don't like your editor. I just don't like it.
Okay.
Do I have the ability to create my own web page on top of your web services, or am I stuck with...
No, not really.
Well,
you'd have to integrate with it.
Let me tell you, we've architected it because we hope at some point to open it up to lots of different web service API integration. But we haven't done a lot of work there. I kind of give you the timeline that we were on, and so we've just pushed out this editor right now and everything else. But yeah, that's the plan. Everything, this is all Ajax based, and so now we would just basically need to publish our API that our own tool is calling it. Okay. So we treated it kind of as if it's an outside third party in some ways. Our interface designers, they kind of have to sit on the other side and the whole thing. But
yeah, we're coming up with interface on that. But here's the other thing too: is that this entire service, the technology, the thing is all free. You can go out there and log in, create accounts, go in and put data in there, log up. You take all your translation memories like Adobe's doing, 1.5 million segments, start leveraging them, assigning the translators. We don't charge for any of this out there. So, eventually we'll have APIs in there where you can do it. We're looking at, some people buy private server editions. That's what we sell. We sell a private server that now this organization controls it, and it's integrated with all of their tools, and documents flow in and out of it, translators jump in, everybody jumps and stuff. Those are where we make our money. This one here is completely free out there, and everyone can use it. So.
Yeah, let's probably calculate which matches better.
That's our secret sauce that we can't give you the information. It's how it works. It's kind of like, Microsoft's page ranking kind of formula, or Google's page rank and stuff. No. It is completely independent language. We have over 200-300 languages in the list right now, and if you have a language we don't have on the list, we can add it and our system will work with it. I have a background and experience with having worked with 85 different languages on the ground in dozens of countries in 40 different writing systems. I had to study the grammars and stuff. It's a little bit of my background, but in that capacity, I figured out something that is so common across language around the world that we can actually search and find this way, and it was so simple that it didn't take
For Chinese, Japanese?
Yes, I speak Chinese and Japanese, and they're fine in this stuff.
I think you're saying a source language, right? Or a standard language.
Well, see, the other thing, too, is if you look at it, we never go to the target on this. We're going source to source.
Yeah, what I mean is...
Target comes with it.
You can put any source language.
Any source, and you go to any target. Any combinations are viable in this system. It's not dependent on a specific grammar or language or structure of it. It's actually, the system learns from the actual grammar and language of the data in the system to give it back to you. So it matches up language to language what it is.
So how many languages is your user experience localized into?
Right now we have 130 language pairs in the data that people put in.
Our particular interface.
Oh, the interface is only in English.
It's not localized.
Sorry, that's only in English still. Okay. And it's something we're working. This is a very new product. It hasn't even been on the market a year yet.
I know. I just thought I'd ask the question for the sake of it.
We doubled our user base in the last 2 months, just to give you a feel for what stage we're in on the early side of this. So. We still need to localize everything as far as different languages. We're actually monitoring what language pairs are using there. Of the 130 language pairs, I think it's almost 100 of them are English to something or something to English. And so we've been okay with that group. But we do have people out there that are in language pairs that are not that. And I don't know how they're using it yet, unless they obviously know English on top of it. But we need to get it localized. So good comment.
So the markup is more expensive than the translation. That is, people who do copy editing
or
markup cost more than translators.
Right.
So what story do you have about that?
Excellent question. Let me go back to this other document and give you an example of that. Because I know that segment 4 has something with markup on it. Let me go to number 4. Oh, it's still blocking. Go to 4. You see that tag flashing there and it says 2 on it and stuff? That means there's some format tagging. Now, one of the things we've done, we've created an open source project out there. It's called File to xlif4j, where we take any file formats. We do Word, Excel, PowerPoint on the Microsoft side. We do the Open Office stuff. We've got FrameMaker in there. We've got text files, XML. We create these filters, but we do a different approach to doing this. What we have done is we've basically said we're going to keep the original file format. When you upload the document, I upload it as a Word document or a FrameMaker file. We'll keep that. We extract the translatable text, put it in xlif. Then anywhere there was tagging outside of the paragraph, it's automatically left in the original formatting. We don't even touch with it. Then we'll put the original translation back into that formatting, so that formatting is left the same. But if there is formatting that's inside the sentence itself, such as bold, italics, hyperlinks, it could be anything. Somebody's fancy flashing lights coming on the text, whatever that formatting is, we put some we put some empty tags in the XML of the xlif file. And then what the translator does is they see this in here. I can go in there and say, I'll click on this for bold. I can go down here and apply the bold and just hit apply. I've now applied the format for that one. The tag gets checked. Mendoza Spice Company. Oops, wrong one. Let's say I did translate I'm wrong. So I hit remove and I go back and put it on. Now what happens is when this job is done, all they have to do is apply anything that's embedded in a sentence. And to the translator, we may identify some things, but some things we won't even identify because we won't be able to render them in a web environment. It'll be an empty tag number 48 or something like that. It's going off to a skeleton file that when it's ready to rebuild the file, it starts with the original file, and it replaces now the target language into every element that was taken out of the original, and it replaces these tags, and we never filter or convert the tag. We use it in its original native format. So if it has a bold code coming from Microsoft Word, that bold code has never been changed. It had a temporary placeholder that we just applied here. I rebuild it on, and then we kick back the export file is the fully formatted file. Now, the areas where it still needs some cleanup, really would kick out the output, a FrameMaker file, whatever it is out there, an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint presentation. It comes out fully formatted with it. But sometimes, like saying a PowerPoint presentation, the translation is so much longer and in the size of the content, it's not going to know that. You may have to go back and review spacing inside of things. Or if you have a text box in a FrameMaker, the text runs out. You'd have to fix those things. But you do not have to do what a lot of people are doing out there right now, which is manually put the text back in each of theirs and apply all the format manually. That's completely handled by the system automatically. We've open sourced that filtering process in that xlif basically because we want anyone in the world to want to use it. And there are a lot of people actually get on it, and it's a pretty active project out there that are working on it. So, does that answer your question? Are you sure?
Well, I still suspect that that's going to turn out to be a very expensive thing. That if this is a very dangerous thing, converting out and then converting back in. The old solution used to be just overtyping.
Correct.
And if, in fact, the translation is much cheaper than the markup,
right,
then we've optimized the...
Even when you overtyped it, though, a lot of times, unless you say this, you're in Japanese and the verb's now at the end on it, and that word happened to be bolded, all of a sudden it's not in the right place. You have to manually, in that tool, recreate that applied format, right? And you have to do it for every one of those that occurs. What I'm saying here is that the type over, here's the challenge with type over, two things. One is, I now don't have the source text that I'm comparing with my target right in front of me, making it easier for me to review that I've actually gotten everything there. Second with it is I still have to manually apply the formatting that's in there. Translators are finding that this is a lot cleaner for them. They know, and here's the advantage. If I'm a translator and I have to do the markup, and I'm in FrameMaker, I got to have FrameMaker. And I have to have Quark, then I have to have InDesign, then I have to have PowerPoint. I do all these things in every document out there. One is I have no referent memory, so I lose all of that because you can't really do that inside of a Quark file or something like that. The second part of it is that I have to now become an expert at markup as a translator for every tool that I use, the documents I get in there. In this system, they only have to know one thing. We keep translators doing what they're best at, translating. We don't make them DTP specialists.
The thing is, right here, you have proposed that translation in Spanish, as a perfect translation because you only propose perfect matches. But now the translator has to go to another tab and apply formatting in a very cumbersome way.
You think it's cumbersome to highlight and hit apply?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
It's easier to do it in the tool and highlight and then hit the right functions and know them all.
Whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. All right.
But the point is the translator could have missed that flash in the format tagging thing.
Right.
Go on, and you have lost the
formatting.
The format.
Right. Typically, what happens in the process?
What I mean, my question is, you are not taking into account formatting to propose translations. That's what I'm seeing.
We're not using the formatting to propose the translation. You're absolutely correct. And some tools have done that to try to improve fuzzy matching. And that's really where it's used in there, is that if this fuzzy match is a little closer, the formatting's in there.
No, actually it reduces the fuzzy matching because you will get the same sentence with a bold word in the middle and without it, with a fuzzy match instead of a perfect match.
Is linguistically the sentence is different just because bold's on the tense?
Could be, or could not be. That doesn't really matter.
In our system, we would provide both hits. You would make the choice. But yeah, you wouldn't know which one has the bold on it. So you're absolutely correct. So it's a different environment. So.
Is the translator expected every time, if Windows, a spice company, has to be italicized throughout the document? Do you have to do this individually?
We don't have a macro to do it automatically yet. I mean, this is a pretty early stage project. We could put those things in there eventually. One of the things on this is typically in the process, the translator doesn't deal with it at all. If having run translation companies and been in it, I actually never had my translators do the DTP because it was a waste of their time and speed in doing translation having to do DTP on top of it. Unless it's a small job and it's really easy and they could work through it, then they do that.
Following the standard guide for the language. Like sometimes you have something in bold in English,
right.
In Spanish it needs to be in italic.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
it's a standard guide.
So there's a modification. For instance, in Japanese, you actually have to change the font. If you want bold, you don't actually use the same, you don't italicize it or put bold on it.
So
right.
That's something the translator is supposed to do.
Right, to some extent. Let me just back up a little bit. I'm talking about laying out entire documents and stuff. Whether, if I had a FrameMaker file or something like that, having the translator literally translate it and do all the DTP is something that nobody else does.
You're supposed to get the tags and mostly everything is done automatically. Then
right.
The DTP person goes and
yeah, a DTP person. So
whatever errors.
Exactly.
But
so
90% of the tags are in there already on the format.
Right. And on this system here, over 90% of the tags are in there automatically and built without the translator dealing with them.
Yeah, but you're losing all the internal formatting, which is the toughest one for the DTP.
The internal, you're talking about these right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that is something that DTP specialist
it's
impossible for him to fix.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, impossible. Yeah, impossible because he doesn't know that.
Because he doesn't know the language to work with them a lot of times. He's a DTP guy who's doing several things. That's why this method works actually on that. What we do is they go through the whole translation and one person jumps to each one of these, applies those few tags, and they're done. And so that's the way they've done it out there. It's one solution. It may not be the best. You may like to have the original source and hand type it over it and then manually go hit bold and apply them. That's better.
You are giving me a translation as a perfect match.
Okay.
I'm a translator. I just go to the next one.
Right.
Because I read, it's fine. I haven't realized about the...
Oh, I see what you're asking for.
Go next, and that's there. The DTP guy is never going to find that.
Right.
Never.
I see your point because if it was an exact match in some systems, it would have all the formatting with it as well.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't have to deal with that part of it on the exact matches on it. So good point. That's a weakness over this system in that you still have to apply those few tags on it. So the advantage is the human translator only has to know one system. He concentrates on doing what he does is translate and identify those elements. It's a different theory and a thought. I mean, this is a different tool. If people like the old tools, stay on them. That's great. I mean, we give this away for free, so we're not going to charge you anything. We're not going to make any money off you. So, it works out fine there. So.
In the spirit of concluding here in the next 5 minutes, maybe you could back out the details of formatting and talk about, again, how people can access this. There are people in the room here that might want to play around with this and see if it meets their needs. Just talk about how they can sign in and access this. Maybe you can talk a little bit just about, what usage you've had and how it's been received, and kind of just give us a sort of a bigger context here, Tim, to kind of conclude.
Absolutely. You go to lingotek.com. All you have to do is hit create an account here, or if you've got an account, and all we collect is your email and then a password which is encrypted, and if we only have the email, so if we lose it, we can give you back give you a new password. So if you contact says, I can't remember my password, we kick back. We don't collect a lot of different. You just create an account out there. I can click on the button. You can see how simple this is. You get a confirmation email that you've chosen to do so, and you click on that, and you're in the system and ready to go. So to get in on it, you just have to remember where lingotek.com is, and you can create an account anytime you want. Give you a feel of the usage and some of the things that are happening out there in the industry. I mean, this is a model where we're collecting a lot of data. We're getting a central repository of translated content from multiple entities. We were about, at the end of May, or at the end of April, we were about 933 users on the system. During May, we grew about, I think it was 480 users or something like during May, another 400 and some in June. We've grown a couple hundred in July so far. So the users are growing about 400 or 500 users on it. We're over to 2,100 users on the system right now.
So just a question, a point of order for us in the room. Have we had LCA look at the end user agreement with you yet? Due diligence on whether we can click and apply freely here?
Probably not.
No. so just guys, pay attention as Microsoft employees that there's an end user agreement, and we should probably be paying attention to that.
And I think you'll like it when you read it too.
That's fine. I haven't clicked and read it, haven't gotten.
Yeah, you need to get there. So
I would share that with my
great point to add there. So another question or comment here too?
It's not yet on the market.
It is on the market. You can get it today.
You said it's not on the market. When you were demoing something, you said it's not yet on the market.
What was not on the market yet is the feature of the MT automatic translation inside the tool. So we're still integrating. We're working with Language Weaver right now and another company that has an MT engine. We'll be putting those in there. We'd be happy to work with Microsoft if you want yours integrated in there for your own Microsoft people to have the automatic translation in here. We do that. That's the part wasn't in there. This is all, everything I showed you is, I'm running it live off the internet right now. So this wasn't a demo off my computer. I'm going out to our servers on this. So.
Well, assuming that LCA was comfortable with the end user agreement, if you guys want to see if this was worthwhile for you, you could then just create an account, upload your translation memories. How long does it take to before, if you upload a translation memory of, I don't know, a couple 100,000 segments, how soon are they going to be able to access it? Isn't there a little lag time there?
Yeah, there is a lag time,
it'll probably
because it has to be indexed.
Well, let me give you an idea. We did 1.5 million on this last set, and it took 29 hours, I think. Yeah, 29 hours to get it loaded. So
sometimes it'll be a little while for you, Dave.
Well, again, if you had a couple 100,000 segments, and within the day you would.
And the only problem we run into, and we do have a little bit of a scalability issue in terms of we've only have limited resources, and so if a bunch of users were putting things in at a time, we do have to schedule them and pull them out as we can. So that's the one problem you might run into. So where it would delay.
Automatically, when the TM is dropped, you just.
It started at that point. If I log.
It just automatically runs it, or does somebody have to intervene?
No, it's manual. Or excuse me, automatic. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
It's not done. Yeah, it's automatic. Oops. So if I get back in here, if I go to TM Vaults, the process of I say import translation memory here. It's just a matter of browsing for the file you want, giving it a name, choosing the file format, and hitting save. But there is on our side a process of putting that in the pool of things that are being processed in there, because writing is the most expensive to our system. Reading from it is very fast. And writing in regular translation when you're just translating along is not expensive, but 1.5 million segments of translation in 10 language pairs can slow down. So we actually, a lot of times the big clients are coming to us and they're saying, they like Adobe, they gave us those 1.5. They said they just gave it to us in an FTP. We then metered it in there, and we tell them a couple days later, 29 hours later, that it's now available for you to search. So
how much do you have currently in there in your public vault and in your private vault?
Excellent. 130 language pairs. Let me just show you the growth on it as well, so you can get a feel for the trend of direction. In May, we had 1 million new words put into the system. In June, it was 11.5 million words, and so far in July, in these first 2 weeks, it's another 25 million words, not including this segment that hasn't gone in yet. There's 90 million words in there. There's over 4.3 million segments of translation in 130 language pairs.
How many of those are private vaults versus public?
Private is right now 94% of the content is in private vaults, which means you're not going to get any hits from their stuff, because unless you're part of their pool and they grant you that access, you can't get to it. You don't even know it exists in the system. The open is the other 6% right now.
What domain is that open stuff? What is that stuff?
It's all different domains. This has a lot of breadth to it, from medical to legal to computers, stuff like what Microsoft does and other things out there, to birth certificates. It doesn't matter. The nice thing is it doesn't matter when it's searching there. It can have a breadth of domain out there. Because of the in-context searching, it tries to find the same stuff. We're actually finding that the engine is smart enough that it finds the same stuff written by the same writer faster than it will find somebody else in the same company that was a different writer. It'll actually tie up the stuff from the translations from that same writer and make them more consistent, because he has a way of writing that actually creates those combinations that it matches up with. We can actually use it to identify if something was written by the same person in there. But it's a side feature.
So final questions here, because we're at 12:30.
How many unique segments do you have? Source?
Over 4.3 million unique segments is on the source right now, so in the system. But that's not our data. It's their data. They're responsible for who has access to it. So.
You've moved wholesale into this online web application mode, and I mean there's some great benefits out of that. You get this immediate workflow solution. I wonder if there's been any pushback about the lack of an offline mode and about being able to, your translators have to be hooked up to the internet in order to be able to do anything.
We've had a little bit there. It's been maybe 1% of the people that are working on the system. Basically, if you're a translator today and you can't be on the internet and you can't be on all the time, you don't know your jobs are appearing, you don't get the emails, you don't get, jobs will walk right by you, because if the project manager doesn't get you an email response quickly, he's going to go to the next guy. So these guys are live on the internet all the time, so we're not seeing as much pushback, but I think a few years ago it would have been a lot more. We do have users in over 80 countries around the world. We've got 37 hits last month just from Addis Ababa, from the African Union there in Ethiopia. They have probably one of the worst connections to the system, but they're on there regularly and using it. I mean, and Argentina, the guys down there, we have huge groups on that. They have terrible internet connections. But one of the things we did is, since you're seeing that data when we're in the linguistic part of it, the actual program gets sent over really quick. It loads up and it's ready. All we're changing is a few text frames. We add some text up here, move another sentence. We're sending just a few sentences. So the bandwidth that we're sending at any one time is fairly low, even on dial-up. Right now, I saw our analytics on it. I think we had about 14% of our people were on dial-up on the system in foreign countries to boot, and still going over the pipes to get to us. And they're still working on it. So. We've been down, 3 times in our history of a year?
We're over 99.9%.
Yeah, so, and it's usually fairly quick we get to fix the problem. But, yeah, we're not perfect, but we're also early stage on it. Great, thank you.
Well, I think we better call it quits. If you have more questions, feel free to come on up. And let's give Tim and Aaron
Thank you for your time.